have as a nation, given that we have competing concerns of growth, as well as, of course, taking care of several large sections of our society. But at the same time, expectations from what can really propel us to be in the top 3 that we are talking about. So I'll try and cover all of this, but let me start, sir, with the fact that last year, India became the 5th largest economy, beating the UK. And there are expectations this year we are going to beat Japan to become the 4th largest. We want to be the 3rd largest in the next 3 years by 2027. I want to ask you your top 2 or 3 policy, I wouldn't use the word recommendations because we are 5 days away from the budget, but your top 3 policy goals for us to really get there sooner than what some of these stated goals are.
Thank you for having me. No, very good set of questions. Let me first start with, you said on infrastructure, one of the major determinants of growth, one of the major determinants of growth, worldwide and well known for the last 75 years, is infrastructure. And that is what this government has done quite forcefully over the last 5-7 years. Now, there's another very important determinant of growth, and that's technology, and that comes via investment and via foreign direct investment. On that, I'm afraid, we have failed and failed miserably. So I think there is a not a trade-off, but on the one hand, they've done the infrastructure, which is very good. On the other hand, they have ignored FDI, made it impossible for foreign investors to come into the country. I can give you some statistics. In the last 5 years, or let's say when 2014, when the government, new government came into being, the FDI as a percent of GDP in India was something like 2.5%, which was one of the highest in the world. Today, or last year, it went down to 0.8%. 0.8. The last time India had such a low FDI to GDP ratio was in the mid-1990s. So I think the government should be doing, I hope they are doing, a rethink on its investment policy for foreign direct investment.
I'm going to come to that. That's a very important part about how do we become attractive, especially at a time when there are global headwinds, but also tailwinds. There are also enough and more tailwinds that could really propel us to become attractive as a global destination. But before that, I want to come upon the big theme that we are talking about here, why there are so many people here in the audience who want to hear your views about how much of a catalyst is infrastructure spending for India in terms of our aspirations for becoming a developed economy by 2047, becoming the top 3 by 2030. And are we doing the right thing? I mean, India has really pushed the pedal, so to say, as far as infra funding is concerned. 1.1 lakh crore last year, expected to be higher this year as well. 10% year-on-year increase on that base is very significant. How do you see that for us in the last 5 years, the infra story, and what would you want for it to really continue going forward?
I think the infra story, as you point out, has been hugely successful over the last 5 years. So successful that the government thinks, in my view, that yahi karte raho and everything will be okay. So infrastructure and across the board, whether it is roads, whether it is sanitation, whether it is electricity, whether it's water supply, absolutely, you know, we are moving fast. But basically, we have, in my view, and we'll find out what happens on February 1st, lost sight that there are other determinants to growth, which is what I pointed out earlier. The second additional policy, and many people have pointed this out, and I've been on this for the last 3 years, that our taxation, we are overtaxing our people to an extent not known in any other country. Let me just give you an example. If you take the share of taxes to GDP. And we now have consistent worldwide data put out by the IMF in collaboration with OECD and the World Bank. And that data shows that our tax to GDP ratio today, or last year, was likely upwards of 19% of GDP. This is all taxes, state, local, center, municipal, GST, etc. Now, let's look at our major competitors. You know, you talk to anybody, and they always compare, you know, if you're discussing growth rates, that China is way ahead of us, has been, though I think now we are growing faster than China. The other country that comes up is Vietnam and East Asia in general. And that is well recognized that East Asia has performed enormously well. So my question is, let's just look at what kind of taxation policies they follow and have followed, because we've got the data now. And the tax to GDP ratio in East Asia as a whole is around 14.5%. We are 19%, okay? And why we are that high is something that I think the government needs to do. So I think that's the other area that I will focus on. Oh, incidentally, which are the countries that are at 19% of GDP? Try Korea. Try the United States of America. They are about 10 times richer than us. And we know, as everybody knows, as your income goes up, your tax goes up as a share. Why are we at the level of India and of Korea and the US? I don't know. But that's a question we need to ask.
I'm hopeful that some of that may be addressed by the finance minister. And trust me, when we speak about direct taxes, personal income taxes, the hall will be in complete agreement with what you say. So do I. But, you know, there are compulsions. When you talk about public finance, there are compulsions because, you know, the government and no other country, frankly, apart from India, actually faces the twin challenges that we face, because one is the scale at which everything has to be dealt with, and then there are competing concerns.
You know, this is a very interesting statement of yours that, you know, and I'd first written about this in 1984. India is unique. At that time, the discussion was on exports. And the article in Economic Times, I think you worked for them, in the Economic Times was 84, that you look out from the highest building in Hong Kong, and what you look at exports more to the world than all of India. 1984. Okay? We are unique. We face challenges. You think other countries don't face challenges? They face the same challenges that we do. So the whole point, and we face the same challenges from 1950 to 1991. And then in 1991, we decided to do something different. And that unleashed the growth process in India. After that, we haven't done anything different. And I'm hoping that on February 1st, we will begin to do something different. So we are not unique. Basically, my simple answer, everybody facing the same challenges: fiscal deficit challenge, you know, inflation challenge, infrastructure challenge, growth challenge. Everybody. This is a globalized world. Where's that instrument? And this instrument makes sure that everybody knows at the same time. We can't be operating like we are in 1950.
No, that's a fair point, that we are not unique, some of the challenges the world is facing. But let me then draw your attention to the fact that when we are talking about infrastructure spending, when we are talking about creating those large hubs to really drive our manufacturing aspirations. You know, we want to be a beneficiary of a China +1 global tailwind, hopefully. Is big ticket infrastructure the way to go about it? And what would be your top 2 or 3, you know, policy guidance for us to really get there faster, to really make the best use of the trend?
You know, continue doing what you're doing in infrastructure, expanding. All these goals are laudatory, very positive. But as I said, I believe that precisely because this government, and actually it's very interesting, historically, the two governments in India that have stressed infrastructure the most have been BJP governments. Vajpayee was the one who started the whole
Golden Quadrilateral and others, yes.
And Modi.
Yeah.
So this has been a huge success story. But you know, we can't keep resting on our laurels. हाँ हमने infrastructure कर दिया, growth आ गई है. The point is, there are, you know, one of the most famous laws in economics is diminishing returns. So we have to look at where, and the other point I want to get back to what I'd said earlier, think of FDI as infrastructure, technology. Technology is infrastructure, and today, in today's global competitive world, it's the most important infrastructure. And why are we not having it? Or not having it to the same degree that we did for the last 20, 30 years. And suddenly the belief is, I don't know what the belief is actually. This is, it's something that I've thought about, I've bothered about, I've written about. What leads the government to ignore FDI? And I'll give you an explanation. And the only explanation I've been able to come up with is that industrialists in India are in control of our policy. And everywhere in the world, industrialists are in control. Okay, so that's not you've heard of the military industrial complex. So we have the Babu industrial complex. So I'm not saying that we are unique, but how much importance we give to industrialists in guiding our policy is where we are different. So you wanted to know where we are different? That's where we're different. And you know, and we've gone through phases. As I said, these issues were much discussed between 1950 and 1990. Then we had a breakthrough in 91. And then after that, we had somewhat of a breakthrough in Vajpayee's term. And then we had somewhat of a breakthrough to 2014 to 2019 in the Modi's first term. We had COVID, and I think the government was brilliant. Policies on infrastructure. This was COVID, how to handle it. Suddenly there's this big shock in the world. Absolutely brilliant. And the world has acknowledged that we did a superb job in handling the COVID fiasco, or whatever you want to call it. But after that, what? So let's go back to 22. After 22, what's the story? And I'm afraid I can't find, we are going in the negative direction after being in a positive direction. And again, you know, this is, you will ask me, you know, we have political compulsions, and I will say even dictatorships have political compulsions. So everybody's got the same thing. So now the question.
You've made the point that we are not unique.
Yeah.
And, but then if you were to suggest 3 areas where India needs to focus on to be able to get back to becoming attractive destination for FDI, what would those be? Because, you know, we have been for the longest a very attractive destination for global investments. Okay. What do you think will get us back there?
The major, what happened? As I said, we were investing, FDI was 2.5% of GDP, and now it's 0.8% of GDP. So what happened? What happened was in 2015, the government decided to not have any more bilateral investment treaties. And this is actually a very interesting story, explanation, And I believe it is the correct explanation. I can't find anybody, and nobody else has been able. So we decided, presumably from pressure from industrialists, that look, we can't, in a bilateral investment treaty, there is a foreign investor and there is a domestic investor. Okay. And they get into a marriage, which is the joint production, joint investment, etc. And you know, marriages, some marriages end up in divorce. So around the world, bilateral investment treaties have been the basis on which a divorce resolution is done. And what is the basis? That first, the two people engaged in a divorce first take about 6 months or so to try and resolve their differences. If they don't resolve their differences, then there is an adjudicator, a judge from a third country. So if it's India and England, you will go to a judge who's not from India, who's not from England, right? Makes a lot of sense, and it has worked brilliantly. But the new stipulation, starting in 2015, is at the end of the investment treaties, you will go to an Indian judge.
Okay.
Indians don't go to Indian judges, yeah.
So dispute resolution is becoming a major thorny issue for global investors.
It's the only issue.
Okay.
You invest in a country different than yours and whose legal system is not known to be the best in the world.
Then, okay, we are talking about global investments. The one question that I think everybody would like to sort of get your perspective on, which is that how do you see the US-India business relationship given Donald Trump is now in power? He's known for striking deals. He has a very favorable view of India. Where do you see that going, and what kind of a transformation it could mean from an economic point of view for India?
I think I have commented on this before, and I think it can only be good for India. Let me explain why Trump will be good for much of the reasons that you've said. Is that he's transactional. We are transactional. India is transactional. Every country is transactional. And this will, it's not that Trump has ideas to increase India's growth rate, to increase India's investment, to better India's infrastructure. Okay? He doesn't. But, you know, there's an old line, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves. And that's where, because of that pressure, we will be able to do the right thing. And the right thing is not unknown. It is, you've got to open up investment. Okay, so already, you must have seen in the news this morning, he put on a 25% tariff on Colombia. Yeah. And then reached a deal with them. So that no longer is going to be the case because they reached a deal on
illegal immigrants. They
illegal
have to go,
immigrants.
yes.
And we've already reached a deal with them on illegal immigrants. But I think the India issue will have to do a little bit more than agreeing on illegal immigrants. Remember that 2019, when Trump was there, our trade deals got distorted because, or didn't happen with the US, because of tariffs on Harley-Davidson. Yeah. We refused. कि भाई हम भी motorcycle बना सकते हैं. ठीक है भाई, बनाओ. So I think that's where.
Do you think this time around a free trade agreement will be signed?
I think, look, I hate to think, I can't, so that's why I'm very optimistic for what will happen on February 1st. That it will be a budget with a difference, not business as usual. And for much of the same reasons that we've been talking about. I mean, just like I cannot explain the FDI policy of India. I cannot explain them not seeing reality for what it is And because we all agree with and are passionate about the things you've talked about India being the third largest, India being a much, Viksit Bharat, 2047. I have written several articles saying it's very possible. I'm not in the camp that thinks, you know, a developed country, however you define it, by 2047 is not possible. But it will need, so I presented this at a conference, etc. I said, but you need to do these 2 or 3 things, and then you'll get there. So I think Viksit Bharat is very compelling. I think the Prime Minister passionately believes in it. I passionately believe in it. And now we'll see if policies follow. I think, as I said, I'm hopeful, very hopeful. But it is because we have no other alternative. So just like in 1991, we had no other alternative, and we acted. And look at the success.
You are saying that we are at that cusp of being able to have that kind of a transformative decision-making?
Yes, absolutely.
What would be your wish list for the budget this time? Because you feel it's really going to be a transformative one.
First, change our FDI policy. I'm not giving it in any order, but since you wanted, since we just finished talking about that. Second, cut personal income tax rates. Third, you know, there was a story, as we were discussing, in a major international bank has said that India needs to cut corporate taxes. So, you know, now think about it. Who will the cut in corporate taxes benefit? Not you, not me, not anybody in the audience, but corporates. They are the last people who need a tax cut. We, the people, need a tax cut. So I don't know, this is the operation of the Babu Industrial Complex already at work. That they're saying, you know, honestly, I've not heard anybody except this morning talk about a corporate tax cut. We had that in 2019. It was hugely successful. And now we need a cut in personal income taxes. So FDI and a cut in personal income taxes would be my 2 major recommendations.
On corporate tax, just a little bit of data that says that corporate taxes made about 58.3% of direct taxes in 2018-2019, the year when, of course, they were cut, before that, and a year after they were cut, and then they have now slid to about 46.5% to 23-24, which means that personal income taxes are now
and the other tax cut, and this has been much discussed on every cocktail party, every TV show, etc.
But sir, you know,
is our GST policy, tax policy.
But you know, just on the income tax bit, you know, when you speak to the policy maker, the other argument is that if I go about slashing taxes and if I go about giving those kind of benefits, then how do I go about funding what this country needs? You know, those big ticket infrastructure projects
you're
that
back.
we're talking.
Who said this?
I'm saying policy makers' argument is
so
that.
Now we're back to we are unique. You think other countries don't face funding problems? We're back to that. You know, that's a really prevalent thinking. कि हमारे problems बड़े unique हैं. And so we need unique solutions. We don't.
So
everybody faces, so how do they solve it? We have got, for the last 75 years actually, coincident with our independence, we've got data now on 190 countries facing the same problems. Why for the last 75 years? You know, decolonization took place by 1960, almost all countries were independent. World War II was over, policies started to be initiated, poverty reduction, etc. Another area we're hugely successful in, have been, fantastic, okay? But, you know, now we've got to, so the taxes are too high. You know, the misconception amongst some of our policymakers is you need additional revenue, raise taxes. You know, what happened and I worked in the background on the corporate income tax cut in 2018-19. there is something called a Laffer curve, but not to go into detail. The point is, we are not at a stage where everybody is compliant with their taxes. So when you cut tax rates, your revenue actually goes up. So ये जो हमारी policy अपने पैर पे अपनी कुल्हाड़ी, अरे please cut taxes so you can fund more infrastructure, so you can have more welfare payments, not raise taxes so I can do that. That's the fundamental thinking that has to come to the fore. And if it doesn't come to the fore, and as I said, it hasn't, we need to look for alternative explanations why the simple economics, Econ 101, is not working in India. So, same compulsions, complete agreement with you, everything. So therefore, we want to increase taxes. We want to increase tax revenue. We want to increase infrastructure. We want to provide a better life for large masses of people. Cut personal income taxes in order to do that. If you cut only corporate taxes, none of that is going to be achieved. But if you cut personal income taxes and you allow FDI to come in, win, win, win.
Okay, that's a simple formula to what many people would think complex public finance issues. But two questions I want to ask before we wrap this up. One is around the role of states, because when you talk about infrastructure, when you talk about connectivity, not all of it is central government's domain. A lot of it actually falls in the states. How do you see the role of states in shaping the big economic dream, the boom dream that we are talking? And then we're going to talk about that one question that I've spoken about for, ever since I started journalism, which was about semiconductor factories. And I'm going to come to that first. Yeah. But first, the role of states.
So I think there is, again, a very important question. We need much more decentralization than we have. We need more power to the states in order to enact the policies that they fit. Now, one possibility is that you give them more revenue from the national kitty. The other possibility is you allow them more freedom to act. So for us, we've always thought about, we'll increase the share of taxes that go to state governments. That again is, maybe it was okay to begin with, but you need them. Maybe our constitution doesn't allow it, various things. Another thing actually on the constitution, since much is talked about, take the GST taxes, and which gives states a lot of power, etc., to enact invisible, not invisible, but popcorn laws. Let's call them popcorn laws. Now, the center can issue, it need not be unanimous that everybody has to agree on, okay? So I want that states should have much more discretion in terms of, and what is happening already with the farm laws, that the states are enacting some very favorable, some states are enacting what the farm laws attempted to do in 2022. So I think, allow states much more freedom of action in different states will proceed at different speeds, and so be it. But that is the first answer to that question. Then the other thing was?
I asked you about semiconductor, because this is the first thing you said, sir, when we started this conversation, that infra is also technology.
Yes.
And I think the one thing that India is really focusing now is to become a major player as far as semiconductor space is concerned. Your thoughts on that as we wrap this?
We are, again, there are many aspirations that we can realize if we go about it the right way. So I think the GCC, already a lot of the software development, et cetera, is happening, which is linked to semiconductors. And semiconductor is the next big issue. I think there, again, I don't know how we can do semiconductors without FDI has to be a major player in there. There's a lot of very good indigenous technology, but it's the collaboration. So, you know, why are you ruling out collaboration? And that is why major objection. They will offer foreign investors, or not foreign investors, foreign firms have something to offer, especially in the area of technology, and we have. Now, the world is fast changing. And, you know, take, for example, I don't know if you've seen the latest news on AI, that China has developed an AI product which is open source. So, you know, it really, I guess, my plea on whatever the issue is, recognize dunya badal gayi hai. And the same rules do not apply. And this is the same for every country. So we need to incorporate ourselves, especially with our Viksit Bharat dream, which is realizable, that we cannot do it with business as usual. We cannot, impossible.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect note to end this, which is that it cannot be business as usual if we really are looking to make transformative change. Thank you so much, Dr. Surjit Bhalla. Thank you, sir. Yes, indeed. Yes, sir.
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया सुरजीत भल्ला सर, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए, बात करने के लिए। गौरी द्विवेदी, आपका भी बहुत शुक्रिया। और 2047 में कैसे विकसित भारत बने, इसको लेकर के एक विज़न भी रखा सुरजीत सर ने। आने वाले वक्त में बजट भी है, उसमें इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर के कैसे और बेहतर काम किया जा सकता है, इसका जिक्र भी सर ने किया है। और हज़ारों लेख के माध्यम से, तमाम किताबों के माध्यम से सुरजीत भल्ला सर ने अपनी राय रखी है देश के सामने। और एक बार फिर से उन्होंने ये बताया कि कैसे अगर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को बेहतर किया जाए, अगर देश को आगे ले जाना है और विकसित करना है, या 5वें नंबर की हमारी जो इकोनॉमी है उसको 4थे नंबर पर, 3रे नंबर पर लाना है, तो और ज़्यादा काम करने की ज़रूरत है और बेहतर काम करने की ज़रूरत है। अब से चंद मिनट बाद हम अगले सेशन की तरफ बढ़ेंगे, बस कुछ ही सेकंड में। और